Hello, dear friends. My name is Magnolia Grace Wellington, though for most of my life, I was just Maggie, the quiet wife, the overlooked homemaker, the woman who faded into the background like an old curtain in a grand house. I'm sitting here now, in my sunlit study overlooking the ocean, a cup of chamomile tea in hand, reflecting on a story that feels like it happened to someone else. But it was me. And if you're watching this on YouTube, perhaps in your cozy living room or during a quiet evening after the grandkids have gone to bed, I want you to know, life has a way of throwing curveballs that turn into boomerangs. Karma, as they say, is that silent force that circles back, often when you least expect it. Let me take you back to where it all began, the Christmas party that shattered my world. It was December 24th, 5 years ago. I was 48 then, married for 25 years to Edward Harrington, the man I thought was my rock. Edward was a successful lawyer, always impeccably dressed, with a charm that could light up a room, or so I believed. Our life in the upscale suburb of Willow Creek seemed perfect on the surface, a beautiful home, 2 grown children who visited occasionally, and holidays filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon. But beneath it all, there were cracks. Edward had grown distant over the years, spending more time at client dinners and less with me. I chalked it up to midlife stress, to the demands of his career. How naive I was. That Christmas Eve, we were hosting our annual party. The house was aglow with twinkling lights, the tree towering in the living room like a sentinel of joy. Guests arrived in waves, colleagues, neighbors, old friends, all dressed in their festive best. I had spent days preparing, baking gingerbread cookies, arranging poinsettias, ensuring every detail was flawless. Edward, as always, was the star, mingling with a glass of scotch in hand, his laughter booming over the carols playing softly in the background. But something felt off that night. Edward's secretary, Vanessa, a young woman in her late 20s with sharp features and an even sharper ambition, arrived fashionably late, her red dress clinging like a second skin. She had been with his firm for 3 years, and I'd always sensed a tension around her, but Edward dismissed my concerns as paranoia. "She's just efficient, Maggie," he'd say with a patronizing smile. That evening, I caught them in the kitchen, his hand lingering too long on her arm as they whispered. My heart sank, but I pushed it aside. It was Christmas, after all. As the clock neared midnight, Edward pulled me aside into his study. The room was dimly lit, the fireplace crackling. He handed me a stack of papers. "Maggie, we need to talk," he said, his voice cold, devoid of the warmth I'd known in our early days. I scanned the documents, divorce papers. My world tilted. "What is this?" I whispered, tears blurring the words. He sighed, as if I were an inconvenience. "It's over. I've been unhappy for years. Vanessa, she's pregnant. We're starting a new life." The words hit like a slap. Pregnant. With his child. All those late nights, the business trips, it all clicked into place. I felt my knees buckle, but I held on to the desk. "How long?" I managed to ask. "Long enough," he replied, no remorse in his eyes. "Sign them, Maggie. Let's not make a scene." And there, amid the muffled laughter from the party outside, I signed. Tears streamed down my face, smudging the ink. I was humiliated, broken. He took the papers, patted my shoulder like I was a child, and left to rejoin the festivities. I stayed in that study for what felt like hours, sobbing quietly, while the world celebrated around me. The next morning, Christmas Day, I woke to an empty house. Edward had packed his things and left with Vanessa. Our children, Alex and Sophie, were devastated when I told them over the phone. They were adults now, Alex in college, Sophie starting her career, but the pain in their voices mirrored mine. The house felt like a tomb. I wandered the rooms, picking up discarded wrapping paper, the remnants of a life unraveling. In the weeks that followed, the betrayal deepened. Edward's family, his domineering mother, Evelyn, and his scheming brother, Marcus, circled like vultures. Evelyn had never liked me, she saw me as beneath their pedigree. Now, she spread rumors in our social circle, that I was unstable, that I'd driven Edward away. Marcus, who worked at the family firm, handled the divorce proceedings, ensuring I got the bare minimum, the house mortgage to the hilt and a small alimony that barely covered bills. They froze joint accounts, leaving me scrambling. I took a job as a receptionist at a local clinic to make ends meet. At 48, starting over felt impossible. Friends drifted away, embarrassed by the scandal. I spent nights alone, replaying memories, our wedding day, the birth of our children, the vacations where Edward promised forever. How had it come to this? Little did I know, the boomerang was just beginning its arc. One rainy afternoon, about 6 months after the divorce, I received a letter. It was from a law firm in New York, addressed to Magnolia Grace Wellington. Wellington. That was my maiden name, one I'd buried under Harrington for decades. Intrigued, I opened it. Inside was an invitation to meet with a Mr. Harlan Thorne, regarding a matter of inheritance. Inheritance. My parents had passed when I was young, my mother in a car accident when I was 5, my father from a heart attack shortly after. I was raised by distant relatives, never knowing much about my family history. But something tugged at me, a whisper of curiosity amid the despair. I booked a train to New York, my heart pounding. Mr. Thorne's office was in a skyscraper, all glass and steel. He was an elderly man with kind eyes and a stack of files. Ms. Wellington, he began, I represent the estate of Reginald Wellington, your biological father. I froze. Reginald Wellington, the billionaire industrialist who died recently. The news had been everywhere, a tycoon with no known heirs, his fortune in limbo. Thorne explained. My mother had been Reginald's secret love, a brief affair before he married into wealth. She left when she discovered his family's manipulations, raising me alone until her death. Reginald searched for us but found me too late. After my father's passing, the man I thought was my dad was actually a stepfather. In his will, Reginald left everything to me, his only child. But there was a catch, a DNA test to confirm, and a clause about proving my resilience. I underwent the test, and it confirmed, I was Reginald Wellington's daughter. The fortune, billions in assets, companies, properties, was mine. But Thorne warned, Reginald's extended family, corrupt cousins and in-laws, had been contesting the will, claiming I didn't exist. They were ruthless, involved in shady deals that Reginald had tried to expose before his death. As I left that office, the weight of it all crashed over me. From rags to riches. No, from betrayal to awakening. But I wasn't ready to claim it yet. I needed time to process, to plan. Edward and his clan had no idea. Vanessa was parading around town with her baby bump, Evelyn hosting lavish parties on what should have been my share. Karma was circling, but I had to let it build. Back home, I started digging. Using a private investigator Thorne recommended, I uncovered Edward's affairs, not just Vanessa, but others. His firm was embroiled in fraud, skimming client funds with Marcus's help. Evelyn knew and covered it up. They had humiliated me, but now I saw the web of deceit. I kept my secret close, playing the part of the broken ex-wife while inside, a fire ignited. Friends, if you're in your 50s or 60s, you know life isn't fair. But sometimes, the universe rights the wrongs in ways that leave you breathless. That was just the beginning. Hold on, because what came next? It shocked everyone, including me. Welcome back, my dear viewers. If you're just joining, I'm Magnolia Grace Wellington, sharing my story of heartbreak turning into triumph. In part 1, I told you about the Christmas Eve divorce that left me in tears, betrayed by my husband Edward, his mistress Vanessa, and his corrupt family. But as I said, karma is a boomerang, it swings back with force. Now, let's dive into how I discovered my true heritage and began to rise from the ashes. This is where the intrigue thickens, like a plot from one of those novels we all love to read in our quiet moments. After the meeting with Mr. Thorne, I returned to Willow Creek a changed woman, though no one could see it yet. The DNA results arrived 2 weeks later, 99.9% match. I was Reginald Wellington's daughter. The inheritance included controlling shares in Wellington Industries, a conglomerate spanning real estate, tech, and manufacturing, worth over $5 billion. There were estates in Europe, a private jet, and trusts that could fund generations. But Reginald's will was clever. It required me to demonstrate stewardship by uncovering and rectifying any corruption within the family empire. He knew his relatives were vipers. I hired a team, Thorne's firm for legal, a cybersecurity expert for digging digital dirt, and a financial auditor. Discreetly, of course. I still lived in my mortgaged house, drove my old sedan, worked my receptionist job. Why? To watch them squirm unknowingly. Edward and Vanessa had married in a flashy ceremony, her belly swelling with their child. They bought a mansion with funds from his firm, funds I now suspected were embezzled. Evelyn threw parties boasting about her new granddaughter, while Marcus expanded the law practice on shady deals. My first move was gathering evidence. The investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Rita, tailed them. Photos emerged. Edward meeting shady investors in back alleys, Vanessa shopping with stolen credit lines, Marcus forging documents. But the real bombshell, Reginald's cousins, the Blackwoods, had tried to erase my existence. They bribed officials to alter records after my mother's death, ensuring Reginald never found me. Evelyn, it turned out, was distantly related to them through marriage, and she'd known about my potential claim. That's why she hated me. I was a threat to their slice of the pie. One evening, Rita called. "Maggie, you need to see this." She emailed files showing Edward's firm laundering money for the Blackwoods. Millions siphoned, taxes evaded. And Vanessa, not just a mistress, she was in on it, using her position to doctor books. My children, Alex and Sophie, were heartbroken when I shared snippets, not the full truth yet. "Mom, how could Dad do this?" Sophie cried over the phone. I comforted her, but inside, rage brewed. I decided to test the waters. At a local charity gala, one Evelyn organized, I attended, dressed modestly. Edward was there with Vanessa, who sneered at me. "Maggie, dear, you look tired," Evelyn said, her voice dripping venom. I smiled sweetly. "Life has its ups and downs, Evelyn. But what goes around comes around, doesn't it?" She laughed it off, but I saw the flicker of unease. That night, I contacted Thorne. "It's time." We filed to probate the will quietly, but leaks happen. Whispers spread in elite circles. The Blackwoods panicked, hiring lawyers to contest. But I had proof, letters from Reginald, DNA, witnesses. As months passed, I underwent a transformation. I quit my job, moved to a discreet apartment in the city. I educated myself, business courses online, meetings with Wellington executives loyal to Reginald. I learned the empire's intricacies, how the Blackwoods had diluted shares, cut corners on safety for profit. One factory explosion years ago. Their doing, covered up. The boomerang swung closer. Edward called one day, out of the blue. "Maggie, I hear rumors. Something about an inheritance." His voice was greasy, probing. I played dumb. "Oh, Edward. Just family matters. He pressed, offering help, code for wanting in. I hung up, laughing for the first time in years. Then came the confrontation with my children. I flew them to New York. Over dinner, I revealed everything. Tears flowed, shock, anger, pride. "Mom, you're a billionaire." Alex gasped. Sophie hugged me. "You deserve this." They cut ties with Edward, standing by me. But intrigue deepened. The Blackwoods struck back. Anonymous threats, a break-in at my apartment. I hired security. Rita uncovered more. Vanessa had a past, fraud convictions under a different name. Edward knew, used her. Evelyn, embezzling from charities. I attended my first board meeting incognito, as a consultant. Watching the Blackwoods squirm when Thorne mentioned new evidence was priceless. Cousin Victor Blackwood, the ringleader, turned pale. "This is preposterous," he blustered. "Friends, at our age, we've seen betrayals, losses. But empowerment, it comes from within, fueled by truth." I was no longer the tearful wife, I was Magnolia Wellington, heir to a legacy. Yet the real shock was coming. Karma wasn't done. One night, alone in my suite, I reflected on my mother. She fled Reginald's world to protect me, raising me humbly. Her strength became mine. I vowed, no more hiding. The court date loomed. Media sniffed the story, lost heir to Wellington fortune. Headlines teased. Edward panicked, showing up at my door. "Maggie, we can work this out. For old time's sake." I shut the door in his face. As part 2 ends, the stage is set. Power awakened, but revenge. That's part 3. Stay tuned, the shocks will leave you reeling. Hello again, wonderful audience. If you've followed my journey so far, you know the tears at that Christmas party were just the start. I'm Magnolia Grace Wellington, and in this final part, I'll share how karma boomeranged with a vengeance that shocked everyone. From the shadows of betrayal to the spotlight of justice, this is where it all culminates. Grab your tea or coffee, this is the dramatic climax you've been waiting for. The probate hearing was set for a crisp autumn day in New York Supreme Court. Media swarmed, reporters, cameras, the works. I arrived in a tailored suit, flanked by Thorne and my team. The Blackwoods were there, smug in their designer attire, lawyers in tow. Edward, Vanessa, and Evelyn sat in the gallery, uninvited but drawn like moths to flame. They thought it was a formality, they'd contest, drag it out, bleed me dry. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, called order. Thorne presented. DNA, Reginald's letters detailing his search for me. Then, the bombshell, evidence of the Blackwoods, fraud. Forged documents, bribes, the factory cover-up. Victor's face drained of color. Objection. His lawyer shouted, but the proof was ironclad. I took the stand. "Your Honor, I was raised without knowing my father. But his legacy is integrity. These people," I pointed to the Blackwoods, "tried to erase me for greed." The courtroom buzzed. Then, I dropped the link to Edward's clan, Evelyn's ties, the laundered money through Harrington Law. Edward jumped up. "This is slander." The judge banged her gavel. Vanessa clutched her now toddler, eyes wide. Evelyn hyperventilated. The ruling, will upheld. I was the heir. Blackwood stripped of shares, facing charges. But I wasn't done. Outside court, media frenzy. I held a press conference. Today, justice prevails. But there's more. I revealed Edward's affairs, the embezzlement, Vanessa's past. Photos, emails, bank records, all public. The fallout was swift. Edward's firm collapsed, clients fled. He was arrested for fraud. Vanessa left him, taking the child, sued for custody. Evelyn's social empire crumbled, charities audited, her arrested for complicity. Marcus, disbarred, bankrupt. My children stood by me as I reclaimed the family home, now mine via assets. We hosted a real Christmas party that year, filled with genuine joy. Alex and Sophie thrived. I funded their dreams. But the ultimate revenge. Philanthropy. I established the Wellington Foundation for Betrayed Women, helping those in their 40s-60s rebuild. Millions donated. Edward begged for mercy from jail. I ignored him. Years later, at 53, I run the empire ethically. Karma boomeranged. They threw me out like trash. Now they're in ruins, while I soar. Friends, life at our age teaches resilience. Betrayal hurts, but triumph heals. Remember, the boomerang always returns. Thank you for listening. Subscribe for more stories of empowerment.